Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting. Could I please have Pastor Hammond come forward for the invocation?
Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the freedoms that we enjoy as Americans to gather in this place and discuss the business of our city. We ask your blessings upon this proceeding. We ask that you would lead us and guide us in a direction that would benefit all. We ask that you would give us the courage to show love and respect to one another, compassion for those in need, courage to hold on to the values of our forefathers, vision for the future. Give us wisdom for every decision, divine guidance to go forward, and prosperity as our souls prosper. Give us your blessings as we acknowledge you. And may Los Banos be a shining light in the midst of darkness. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. I'd like to call to order the meeting of October 2nd, the City Council meeting of October 2nd, 2019. And Chief Reese, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Director Maloney.
Faria. Johnson Santos. Jones. Lewis. Villalta.
Here, we do have a quorum. Consideration of approval of agenda. Do I have a motion? Mr. Faria.
I'll move to approve the agenda as submitted.
Mrs. Santos.
Second.
Motion by Faria, second by Santos to approve the agenda as stated. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? None carried. Presentations. Certificate of recognition to David Santos Farming, or David Santos, as the Agricultural Business of the Year 2019. David, would you come up here, please? I got it. We had a farm-to-table event, which was a huge success about a week ago, and all these dignitaries came, and they were presenting all these certificates to David and all these accolades. And I got up and I said, David, I don't have anything for you. And the reason I didn't is because one person at the chamber didn't talk to another person didn't talk to someone at the city. So a certificate was not made out. So I felt really bad, but you know, this is 2 bites at the apple, David. You get to come here and you get to get recognized again, which I think is very worthy for you to come. You really do. David and I have known each other for over 60 years. And I can tell you during that time, David has grown up to be just a fine citizen and also a huge footprint in the farming industry in Los Banos. So we're lucky to have him in this community, and very lucky that he stayed in Los Banos. And David, thank you for being my friend, and thank you for coming this evening. And Outstanding Farmer of the Year and Business, David Santos.
I appreciate
recognition and everything, but like I always say, God give me the health to get out of bed and the mind to think things out. Without him, I couldn't go nowhere. So without his blessings, we have nothing. And the community's helped me through the years. I've had a lot of good people worked with me and landlords and stuff like that. And things go up and down in agriculture, like you guys know, but we were able to hang in there for be 50 years next year.
Thank you, David. So next, I'd like to recognize October as Domestic Violence Prevention Awareness Month. And we have a couple of young ladies here this evening. And if you'd like to introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Liz Tyler.
Hi, and I am Brenda Martinez.
Well, Liz and Brenda are here this evening to accept this proclamation of what I'd like to read at this time. And whereas 1 in 3 women and 1 in 7 men have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner in their lifetime. Children and the elderly are also counted among the victims. And whereas 1 in 15 children are exposed to intimate partner violence each year, and 90% of these children are eyewitnesses to this violence. Domestic violence violates an individual's privacy, dignity, security, humanity, and affects the lives of individuals, families in our community and in the nation. And whereas the intimate partner violence is estimated to cost the United States economy between $5.8 billion and $12.6 billion annually, with the average of 20 people per minute experiencing this physical violence, this amounts to 10 billion abuse victims annually. In the last year, the Valley Crisis Center has received 607 domestic violence hotline calls, has assisted in 560 victims of domestic violence, and has sheltered 87 men, women, and children, and has provided 1,625 bed nights at their safe house, and has provided 1,276 bed nights at their transitional homes. The Valley Crisis Center works to prevent domestic violence through programs aimed at creating protective environments and promoting healthy peer-to-peer relationships. It's not just treating the horrible effects of domestic violence, but trying to prevent it. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the mayor and the city council members of the city of Los Banos do hereby recognize the important work done by the staff and volunteers at the Valley Crisis Center, and do hereby proclaim the month of October as Domestic Violence Prevention Awareness Month. The community is encouraged to actively educate themselves on this issue and explore how they can contribute to prevention efforts. And these 2 young ladies are here tonight to tell you about a few of the events that are going to happen in Los Banos. Please.
Good evening. My name is Liz Tyler, and I'm an advocate at Valley Crisis Center. This is Brenda Martinez, Valley Crisis Center's program manager. Thank you for recognizing October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. To be aware of the impact of domestic violence in Los Banos, we must face the reality of domestic violence. Domestic violence is bruises and broken bones. Domestic violence is being threatened with guns and knives. Domestic violence is not being allowed to see your family and friends. Domestic violence is being told you are ugly, stupid, and a bad parent. It is being blamed for the violence your partner inflicts. It is not having access to bank accounts. It is being told no police or judge will believe you. It is being told if you leave this relationship, no one will ever love you. Domestic violence is terrifying, exhausting, and confusing. Domestic violence is many things, but it is not hopeless. Valley Crisis Center believes that we can end domestic violence in our community. From July 2018 to June 2019, 560 victims of domestic violence sought services at Valley Crisis Center. If we have done our job, that is 560 people in Los Banos who now know that their community cares about their safety and well-being. That is 560 people who have at least a glimmer of hope that there is peace after domestic violence. We need our entire community to work towards peace for all families. We invite you to join us Wednesday, October 23rd at our annual Peace for Families March and Community Gathering. This event is an annual reminder of Los Banos' commitment to support survivors, end domestic violence, and build a community where all families can thrive. And I think that we have posters that will be distributed after. Thank you for your continued support.
let's go on to item 6, public forum. Members of the public may address the city council members on any item of interest that is within the jurisdiction of the city council, which includes agenda and non-agenda items. No action will be taken on non-agenda items, and speakers are limited to a 5-minute presentation. Detailed guidelines are posted on the council chamber informational table. And when you approach the podium, please state your name and your city of residence. And if you would, if you have a cell phone, please turn them off and put them on vibrate at this time. Is there anyone who wishes to speak at the public forum?
Yes, Mayor and council members, my name is Michael Hughes. I'm the commander of the VFW in Los Banos, and I live in Los Banos and have for quite a few years. I'd like to talk to you about a couple events that are going to be happening in the very near future in Los Banos. On Thursday, October 24th, we're going to have a Veterans Town Hall meeting at the Veterans Memorial Hall at 615 East Street. This meeting was set up by the National VA. It's open to the public. It's open to all veterans. We're going to have people there that are going to set up information about what's available to veterans. There's going to be representatives from the Veterans Benefit Administration, the Central California Healthcare System, the National Cemetery to give these. The topics that will be included will be the Mission Act for the VA and what they're trying to do in different communities, patient experiences, employee satisfaction, community care, facility planning, and parking issues at the facilities where the veterans go to get their treatment. One of the complaints with a lot of veterans is they don't have the transportation to get to Fresno, Palo Alto, or other places to get their services. One of the things that we've been in contact with the Secretary of the VA, they're working on trying to open more clinics. One of the big issues at this meeting is going to be talking about a facility possibly in the Los Banos area to add to for the west side of the county, because right now the closest clinic is in Merced. The closest hospital is in Fresno or Palo Alto. So you've got a long way to go. They've got a long time. It takes them. Anybody going to the VA to an appointment now, they got to figure they're going to be gone 3 or 4 hours to get this done. So there are some real positive things coming out of it. This will take place from 5 to 6 for the information fair and 6 to 7. They want people to come. They want them to express their opinions. They'll answer questions. And do that. The second thing that we have going on is in November, the 21st of November, we're supposed to have the ribbon cutting for the pod that's being put at the Veterans Memorial Hall. Now, when I say a pod, a lot of people are saying, well, what is a pod? They're going to put in a telemed pod where veterans can come in there, they can make an appointment, they can come there, they can speak with their doctor over a television screen. They'll be able to do their blood pressure. They'll be able to do some ultrasounds, some other things that they'll be able to do. So it's the future of medicine, and there are 3 of these that are going in the United States. There's one in Pennsylvania, one in someplace in Montana that's 1 million miles from anywhere, and one in Los Banos. So Los Banos is very lucky, and on that day, the Secretary of the VA is supposed to be here. He tells us he's going to be here to do the ribbon cutting. So we're really excited about that. We're real excited about what is happening with Los Banos. 6 years ago, we talked to them about coming to Los Banos to do one of these meetings, and they just kind of blew us off. Well, today it was their idea. They want to put it forth, and they came to us and wanted to know if we'd help them with it. So we're happy to do that. I know there are several homeless veterans in town. We've been trying to get them in. They're going to have a stand down this Friday in Merced. We've offered to guard their carts while they're gone. They're going to pick them up by a bus on Friday morning and take them to Merced. We're going to lock them up in our yard, the carts. So, we're trying to do what we can to get the services for the veterans. So anybody have any questions? If not, I'm going to leave flyers with Lucy for all of you. You can see this. Hopefully, all of you can come. If not all of you, some of you can at least come to the meeting because I think it's going to be very productive for Los Banos.
Well, just let me say, Mike, nothing happens without a local push. So thank you. And we all know how things get done. And if you don't ask, you don't get. And so thank you for asking. Thank the vets for their coordination and all the officers there. We get put on the map because of local input. So thank you very much.
And then, and it's a big thing because, a lot of veterans don't have the transportation. A lot of them don't have the transportation to get over to these places to get their services. And the other thing, remember, November 2nd, the Veterans Parade.
Yep.
So.
We'll be there.
And we thank the city for all of your cooperation because without you, we couldn't do it. And we're so happy to, it's been like a seamless approach this year. We've had not one glitch in anything. So
Okay.
I want to thank you.
209-509. I won't give you the rest of the phone number. Okay.
No,
Right there. Okay.
He's done a great job at getting
Okay.
this done. We haven't had one problem. So
Fantastic. Good to hear. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and city council members. Rhonda Lowe, UC Merced Small Business Development Center, a business coach. I'm here tonight to let you know we have 2 opportunities this month for our local businesses to promote and grow their business, and nothing makes me happier than to have those available. The first one is going to be on October 10th, and in partnership with the city of Los Banos, we'll have our 3rd Business to Business Expo. It'll be held at the community center from 9 to 3 p.m. We're going even a little bit longer this time. And we have some new businesses coming this time, and we still have plenty of room for other businesses to come. It's free. You don't have to pay anything to be there to promote your business. You have a table to set up. And we're going to do some introductions like what we did before, where we actually talk about what our businesses can do for each other. So we'll introduce our products and services and give people a chance to get to know our businesses, because together, working together and supporting each other, our community grows as a whole. So that's on October 10th from 9 to 3 p.m. and at the community center. The next one is our new business. Wait, what's the name of it? It's just a brand new one. It's a Boost Your Business series that we're starting. And our first one's going to be October 17th, and it'll be at the Police Annex. And that's from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And it's 10 things every retailer needs to know. And so we're going to help people that maybe are new retailers, maybe people that are thinking about going into retailing, the things that they need to know in order to be a good retailer and to be a vibrant part of our community. So that's October 17th from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And again, that's another free workshop.
That's across the street? Mm-hmm. Okay.
At the Police Annex.
Police Annex.
And I'll give these to Lucy to pass out to you for the Business Expo.
Okay. Do you have something for the Annex too? Okay.
But I can get it to you.
Would you get it to us and put it, and then they'll put it in each of our boxes?
I will.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak at the public forum?
I'm Elaine Corey, Las Banos, and I want to state my opinion against the P-bid. The city was supposed to be neutral when this thing started. They were going to do a survey to see what the owners wanted, when it was favorable or not. But that's not exactly the way it worked out. The city had 2 paid people working to push this thing through. The city reimbursed Sharon Silva's wages, and Stacy spent an awful lot of time pushing it. That, to me, is not neutral. The other thing that really bothers me is when you didn't have enough votes to push it through, you changed the boundaries of the district. And was that because all of the owners on H Street were no? Or was that because wool growers whispered in Greg Hostetler's ear and he whispered in Sharon's ear? Sharon's explanation was that there was no economic benefit to H Street property owners. There's 2 bars, or there's a bar, 2 restaurants, and a retail business. And if that's the case, then there's no benefit to any of the offices, beauty parlors, service business, banks. Their clients are going to come to them, whether you do anything or not. It doesn't matter to them whether we paint our buildings or do anything. These are old buildings, and no amount of paint is going to change that. It's going to take major, major overhaul to change the structures. And that brings us to the grant programs. If this is such a good thing, then why were Tom Calhoun and Taylor Wolfson's the first ones to benefit? And this came out of Tom Calhoun's mouth at the June 27th owners meeting, that he and Taylor both got $20,000 to paint their buildings. If it was so good, couldn't he have left that money there to be used for something to benefit everybody downtown? Are they too poor to pay for their own paint jobs? And this is definitely against the bylaws and the mission statement for the Downtown Association, which is a nonprofit status. When that thing was formed in 2013, it specifically states that it is absolutely not to benefit any person or any member. And to me, painting an individual's building is benefiting a specific person. I'm against the city's mismanagement. You always hire consultants and you have lots of great book smarts and lots of ideas, but no common sense. How many times have you changed the trees? At least 4 times. Is that because you didn't tell a pollinator from a non-pollinator and we had messy trees, so you had to go back and change them out again? You've changed the street lights twice. And that's because you forgot to check the height of the trees and you forgot that we're gonna grow and cover the lights so it looks like a ghost town downtown. The other thing is, you killed all the mom and pops downtown. You pushed everybody to the shopping centers and you wanted the big box stores because they were gonna bring all the revenue to the city. Well, now what do you want us to do? Pay for your mistakes? And you love grant money, but you forget grants, once they're built, have to be maintained. Your rail trail is a prime example of that. Where are all the shops and the housings that were promised with that? Nothing has come to pass. I just don't have any faith that the city is going to do anything that's going to benefit the downtown business owners other than cost us money and have more bureaucracy. So we're going to hire a director and 2 or 3 assistants for her. Whoopee.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak at the public forum? Not seeing or hearing anyone, I will now close the public forum, bring it back to council level, and we will go on to item 7, consideration of approval of consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and voted on in one motion unless removed from the consent agenda by a city council member. And tonight we have
Items on the consent agenda are as follows. Warrant numbers 218099 through 218327 in the amount of $1,361,111.48. City Council Resolution Number 6132, amending the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget as it pertains to the expenditure of a cabin chassis with 240 hook lift system in the amount of $133,710.45. City Council Resolution Number 6133, approving the recertification of the City of Los Banos Sewer System Management Plan. City Council Resolution Number 6134, authorizing the city manager to develop and submit an application for statewide park development and community revitalization program grant funds. City Council Resolution Number 6135, approving closure of non-essential city offices on December 24th and 31st, 2019. And the items are to be approved as submitted.
Is there any city council member who would like to remove an item for discussion? Mrs. Lewis? You have to put press in. Now you did. Thank you.
No, I'm not requesting an item, but if there are no requests from other city council members, I'd like to make a motion.
Go for it.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Mrs. Santos?
Second.
Motion by Lewis, second by Sanders to approve the consent agenda as stated. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? None carried. Public hearing. If you challenge proposed action described herein in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing described herein or in written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to the public hearing. I am going to read this agenda item, and then the city attorney and I are going to excuse ourselves because we have a conflict of interest because we own property downtown. A public hearing to receive public comment and consideration regarding the formation of the Los Banos Downtown Property and Business Improvement District, LBDPBID, and the levy assessment. Item A8A1, City Council Resolution Number 6136, establishing the Los Banos Downtown Property and Business Improvement District, approving the assessment formula and levying the assessments. And we are going to go to, I think, Director Elms. Okay, if you can do this. Okay. You.
All right. So now they've gotten a chance to leave, I do have to read a piece here, and I have to read it exactly, so please bear with me. This is the time and place for the hearing of the formation of the Los Banos Downtown Property and Business Improvement District. Before we begin, are there any disclosures relating to this hearing? Okay, if there are none, Ms. Melly, have the notices and ballots as required by law been mailed to recorded owners of each parcel within the proposed district?
Yes, they have.
Thank you. Ms. Melanie, have you brought to the hearing all ballots that you have received on this matter?
Yes, I have.
Thank you. Will the representative of the Community and Economic Development Department summarize the action before us, please?
Thank you, Ms. Mayor Pro Tem. So there's a PowerPoint presentation with this particular item. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so just an overview. The Los Banos Downtown Property and Business Improvement District is a benefit assessment district whose main goal is to provide improvements and activities which would provide a special benefit to the assessed parcels. This approach has been successful in other cities throughout the country to provide special benefits to property owners, namely increased sales, attraction of new tenants, increased occupancies, and specifically increased property values. And just in California alone, over 200 cities have established PBIDs, Property and Business Improvement Districts. Just in the Central Valley, we have communities that are known for their downtowns, such as Clovis, Hanford, Fresno. We have Turlock, Modesto. The city of Merced, the actual city of Merced is the project proponent. The city themselves is hiring a consultant to put together the formation of a PBID. There's Lodi, many cities, not only in the Central Valley, but throughout the state of California. And when you look at a successful downtown, typically that common thread throughout those successful downtowns are because they have a sustainable funding source, such as a PBID. So just some background on how we got to where we are today. A coalition of property owners and the Los Banos Downtown Association, under the direction of Sharon Silva with SS Consulting, decided to pursue an establishment of the Los Banos Downtown Property and Business Improvement District in order to create a revenue source dedicated to providing special benefits to assessed property owners. Really how this all began was Sharon came to Los Banos. Jean Lieb found her in Las Vegas. She was retired and made a phone call. And she came to Los Banos to do a workshop in December of 2017. And her and I, that first day, we took a walk in our downtown. she had asked me, hey, can we take a tour? I really want to see, she had lived here years before, and she really wanted to see how the downtown has evolved. And so her and I went through, and she saw the Crest Theater and just how remarkable it is and how beautiful it would be to be rehabbed. The fountain at the drugstore, just some iconic places. The Bilotti Building, for instance, just some iconic buildings. And so we went through, we assessed, and really what Sharon's evaluation was, you have some really good potential here in your downtown, and you have great opportunities. Let's have a workshop, and she was going to be presenting that night, and let's see where this goes. So she had done another workshop in April, where the community was invited, and really Sharon focused on beautification. As successful downtowns need beautification, rehab, revitalization. They need activity, they need marketing, and they need economic development. And so the property owners came back after that workshop and said, we want those things. How do we get that started? We need a sustainable funding source. And that's really what kicked off this whole movement. So on April 17th, 2019, the City Council directed staff to proceed forward with the process of the PBID and partner with the Las Banos Downtown Association to prepare a management district plan and engineer's report to form the Las Banos Downtown Property and Business Improvement District. So with that direction, staff partnered with Civitas. We have a representative here today, Jordan Pittman from Civitas, who has helped us with preparing a business management plan, and also has incorporated an engineer's report within, which the law requires. On August 7th, the City Council adopted Resolution 6115, authorizing the city manager to sign a petition and assessment ballot. Petitions were received at that time from more than 50% of the district assessment budget. So then the City Council then adopted Resolution 6116, declaring its intention to form the Las Banos Downtown Property and Business Improvement District, which began the notice and Proposition 218 process. Sorry, I skipped through those. So the location of the boundary is K Street up to, it's I Street up to the properties fronting I Street. It's up to 5th Street and up to 7th Street. And that's the main core of downtown. And as previously mentioned in the public forum, the boundary was, as it is recommended, this was a recommendation from Civitas to create a more linear boundary and also to look at the core downtown business district. So the purpose was to provide activities and improvements as a special benefit to assessed parcels. So that's what a PBID does. And it also provides maintenance and general security, marketing and placemaking, and small infrastructure programs directly and only to assessed parcels within the boundaries. And within your staff report is the management plan, which distributes the budget in those 4 categories, which this is next. So the annual assessment for the initial year of its 5-year operation is anticipated to be over $146,000, and the annual budget may be subject to an increase in assessment rates of no more than 2.5% per year, but that is up to the property owners, which would be managing the district. And the assessment is based on a parcel square footage. The standard is 27 cents a square foot, and the government rate is 20 cents a square foot. And this slide shows the breakdown, as I previously said, of the budget. So it's in the 4 categories. It's all broken into 25% for maintenance, marketing and placemaking, small infrastructure, and operations. So things as maintenance are power washing of sidewalks and cleaning of downtown. Marketing and placemaking are for events and activities. It's for a new website. It's just to bring awareness to downtown and get folks to come downtown. Small infrastructure for items like bench equipment or the seasonal banner flags that are on the light poles. And then the operations are to run the downtown and to run the PBID as well as the association. The duration of the proposed district would be a 5-year lifespan beginning January 1st, 2020 and ending December 31st, 2024. Near the end of the term, if the property owners decide to renew, it would require a petition and a ballot process all over again with the city council, with the hearing process to be renewed. So it's just not an automatic renewal. It would have to come through the Proposition 218 process. There would need to be petitions before that for the district to even be considered for renewal. So the management of the proposed district, the Los Banos Downtown Property Owners Association would serve as the owners association for the Los Banos Downtown Property Business and Improvement District, and an executive board would be developed with property owners. The law does require one non-property owner, so it has to be a community member to be a part of that board, but it would be a majority of property owners to sit and to determine how the funds are to be spent and to be an oversight to make sure that the funds are spent in accordance with the management plan. The district formation process, so this is essentially the timeline and what is required by law to take place. So first, a resolution of intention, which this item has been completed. This is upon the submission of written petition of more than 50% of the assessment to be levied. The City Council may initiate proceedings to form a district by adopting a resolution expressing its intention to form a district, and that was completed on August 7th. The next step is a notice and Proposition 218 ballot. This was completed. This requires the city to mail written notice and assessment ballots to the owners of all property proposed to be assessed. Mailing the notice and assessment ballot begins a mandatory 45-day period in which owners may cast ballots. And this was done on August 16th. And then the final step is a final public hearing, and that's what's before you tonight. The council will open a public hearing to receive public testimony. At the close of the public hearing, council will direct tabulation of ballots and determine whether there is a majority protest against the assessment. And if there is no majority protest, the council may adopt a resolution declaring the results of the majority protest proceedings inform the Los Banos Downtown Property Business and Improvement District, or if there is a majority protest, the district shall not be formed and the assessment shall not be imposed. So the fiscal impact of this item to the city, so Proposition 218 states that no parcel is exempt from assessments if they receive benefit from the improvements and activities. The proposed annual assessment for city property for fiscal year 1920 is estimated to be $17,744.20. And so within the staff report, including within the resolution, if the formation moves forward, staff is requesting a budget amendment to increase expenditures to the Community and Economic Development Department for downtown promotions in the amount of $14,474.20. And that's because there is a remaining over $3,000 left in fiscal year 1920. This is for the portion of the downtown banners. It is assumed that if the PBID should pass, that the PBID would absorb the cost of the downtown banners, the seasonal banners, that the city currently covers that cost of over $9,400. So that would be a cost that would be absorbed should the property owners decide to carry that forward, but the city would no longer be covering that expense. So I'm going to end with just some reasons why to form the Los Banos Downtown Property and Business Improvement District, and these are all contained within the business management plan. So first, They've been shown that they allow property owners to lead and shape future services and improvements through the Los Banos Downtown Property Business and Improvement District. It would attract new business and investment throughout Los Banos. It create an opportunity for private and public partnership with a unified voice for Los Banos downtown. And it would be an opportunity to establish private sector management and accountability. So with that, staff is recommending that the Los Banos City Council first open the public hearing and then close the public hearing, request the city clerk to tabulate the ballots, and then if there is majority support, adopt resolution number 6136 as read by title. And that concludes my presentation. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Director Elms. So we now will hear from any interested persons in the audience who wish to speak on this matter. Is there anyone? Okay. Next, under the law, any person who filed a written ballot may withdraw or change that ballot until the close of public testimony. I will ask that any person who wishes to withdraw or otherwise change their sealed ballot come to the podium, identify themselves, and obtain their ballot. You wish to come up? Does the staff have any comments or responses to the testimony? The oral testimony part of the hearing is now closed. Now is the time to calculate and compute the ballots. If a majority protest exists, then the council cannot renew the P bid. A majority protest exists if ballots submitted in opposition to the assessment exceeded the ballots submitted in favor of the assessment. In tabulating the ballots shall be weighed according to the proportional financial obligation of the affected property. The city clerk shall act as the impartial person to tabulate the ballots, which shall be open to the public. We now continue this matter to allow the staff to calculate the vote. Once the vote has been calculated and checked, please provide the city council with the official results, and then we will reconvene on this matter. We will now take recess while the ballots are being tabulated. Short recess, please. I will now reconvene the Los Banos Downtown Property and Business Improvement District hearing for the purpose of determining the ballot vote. Ms. Melanie, what is the result of the vote count?
The ballots have been tabulated, and it equaled a 62.58% yes votes in the a dollar amount of $64,927.05. And there was a 37.42% no votes. And that dollar amount tallied up to $38,818.44.
Thank you very much. The votes support the renewal of the P-bid, and the ballots submitted opposed to the P-bid do not exceed the ballots submitted in favor of the P-bid. This means the council may adopt the resolution to renew the P-bid and approve the assessment. Do I have a motion by council for the resolution number 6136, resolution from the City Council of City of Los Banos establishing the Los Banos Downtown Property and Business Improvement District, approving the assessment formula and levying the assessments? Councilmember Jones? Oh, sorry.
I'd like to make a motion to approve City Council Resolution number 6136 as submitted.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Councilmember Lewis?
Second.
Thank you very much. First by Jones, second by Lewis. And then we'll open the discussion. Oh, okay. Sorry, I opened that right now. Is that correct? I'm sorry.
Once you have a motion and a second.
Okay, gotcha. So I'm going to, let me cancel that out. Boop, boop. All right, so I'm going to open up for discussion. And do you happen to have, got it? Sorry, let me get that together. Gotcha. Mr. Faria, please.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. First of all, I'm not comfortable voting on this without an attorney sitting in the city attorney's seat. He had to step out, and I would like to see us have an attorney, if for nothing else than parliamentary procedure. Moving on, though, could someone answer why we cut out the H Street area from the P-bid area?
Director Adams?
Yes, so that was based on a recommendation from Civitas, which is the consultant the city hired to help us with the formation of the P-bid. Prior to the boundary that is within the management plan that you see before you today, the boundary picked and chose areas. It had 6th Street, I Street, parts of J Street, and parts of K Street, which Civitas had said, no, you need direct boundaries, you need straight boundaries, and also you need to look at the core downtown district, which is mainly 6th Street and I Street. There is the flanking streets as well that have core businesses, but in terms of the improvements of small infrastructure, seasonal signages and things that the P-bid would be absorbing, that's not on H Street. They don't have that same type of infrastructure. And so with that, they would not have the same benefits, and that's where the recommendation was to tighten the boundary district.
Thank you very much. And then a final comment. Just because we can do something, I don't think we necessarily should do something. Even though there's only 32% against, my concern is that if we go ahead with this, we're going to have a 32% contingency of opposition to everything we try and everything we do in that downtown area. And I would not recommend setting up especially a situation where people are paying something resembling a tax, a fee to an organization when you have 1/3 of the group in opposition, landowners in opposition. So I'm just letting you know I can't support doing this at this time, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from council? Okay, so we go to a roll call vote if I'm mistaken. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Faria. No. Johnson Santos.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Lewis. Valulta.
All right, it looks like it passes. So as of right now, will you bring the mayor back in? or- Okay. We're going to bring the mayor and our attorney, Bill Vaughn, in. Thank you.
Okay, we're back, and we're now at 8B, public hearing, to receive public comment and consideration of an ordinance to amend and restate Article 34, Chapter 3 of Title 9 of the Los Banos Municipal Code regarding density bonuses and other affordable housing development incentives. And we're going to go to Community and Economic Director Elms.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's a PowerPoint presentation with this item.
Okay?
And I'm going to warn you ahead of time that this is a very long and it can be a very complicated ordinance.
Did the attorney write it?
Yes, he did.
Oh, that's
Yes,
probably that's long.
in his infinite
Okay.
wisdom. But it is state mandated law, and what we hope that we're proposing to present to you tonight is a much simpler version and a much friendlier read. So I'm just going to dive right into it. This is density bonuses are in accordance to California state law, government code. Local governments are required to adopt local ordinance with state law. The city of Los Banos has had a density bonus ordinance since 2010. And then before that, it was 2006. The last rewrite was in 2010. And legislative updates have been adopted at the state level in the past 9 years. And so the city needs to update to ensure it is in full compliance with state law. And when in doubt with a state mandate, the state mandate would trump our local law. So how it works, what we've tried to do with this, what our city attorney and I have tried to do is just break this down into the most easiest way we can, and it's into bite-sized pieces. So a developer would agree to produce qualifying projects in exchange for up to 4 things. So to apply for a density bonus, a developer would have to ask for the density bonus and would have to produce a qualifying project, which I'm going to get into that, in exchange for possibly 4 things. Those 4 things could be a density bonus, concessions and incentives, waivers of development standards, or parking reductions. This is in exchange, the city gets affordable housing or another qualifying project that is guaranteed to remain so for a specified duration. So how to qualify? So you'd have to meet the affordable housing levels, which you'd need to either be a very low income bracket, low or moderate. And then if it's a specialized qualifying need, it would be for housing for seniors, housing for foster youth, disabled veterans or homeless, or a land donation to develop affordable housing. So those are the criteria. I'm not going to get into the specifics of who gets 5% and what gets 10%. I'm going to give you an example that will hopefully help break that down, because once we get into the percentages, it gets very confusing. So I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible. So I have a project example for you. This is something that the city attorney helped develop. So we're going to start off with if a developer came in with a base project with a total of 66 units, it's a rental apartment project, and they asked for a density bonus and notified staff that they would be providing 8 units, which would be affordable. We would do the math, and the percentage of those 8 units out of the 66 overall units is 12.1%, but according to the law, you would have to round up. So any fraction thereof, you would have to automatically round up, even if it's 0.1. So they would get 13%. The market rate units would be 58 units, which are 87% of the project. And then the eligible density bonus for providing low income, they would get a minimum of 10% of the total project units because of that low income level. They would automatically get 20% density bonus. And then for exceeding the minimum 10%, because they're now providing us the 13% of affordable units, they get a percentage above that. So for exceeding the minimum 10% of low income units, you say take the 13% minus 10% times 1.5 would equal 4.5%. So for each 1% of low income units over a minimum of 10% yields an extra 1.5%. So that's our math that we're showing. So the total density bonus would be 20% plus 4.5%, which would be 24.5%. And if I'm going too fast, please slow me down because I know this can get a little technical. So the density bonus units, you take the 66 units times 24.5%, and that would get us 16.2 units, but any fraction thereof automatically rounds up. So that would mean a total of 17 density bonus units.
Additional unit.
In addition, so
To
their
the
base
66.
project
Correct.
was 66.
All right.
Now it's plus 17.
Okay.
So this would give us 83 units in total, 58 market rate units, 8 low income units, and 17 density bonus units. So I'm a very visual person, and I wanted to break this down in a way that you could see. So the yellow is the market rate units, which are the 58 units. 8 are the low income units, which are the target units. That's what helped the project qualify for that density bonus. And what's in blue is the density bonus. So if you can see, if you took the blue off of the graph, that's what that project would be if the state didn't require a density bonus. And if the city didn't have a policy to allow density bonus, you wouldn't have the blue units at all. So that's why the state has required local jurisdictions to adopt density bonus ordinances so that we can incentivize affordable housing builders to build. And this is a way to do it.
So is this on a given lot size?
No. So it's based on the density. So if this particular project, their maximum density was the 66 units, they were already at their maximum density per our municipal code, this would be in addition to.
All right, so on the same lot?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So what's the cap on this? Could they do the yellow, the red, and the blue all in low income and then double that on that same lot?
Because there's a maximum of 30%.
Yes.
A maximum of 30%.
So This illustration is showing you that without the red units set aside for low income, that particular piece of property could only have 66 units at the maximum. So that's what the illustration is trying to show you. Whatever zoning it is, whether it's R1, R2, R3, whatever it is, and the piece of property, say it's 5 or 6 acres, it could only have 66 units on it. What this illustration is showing you is that if the developer comes to the city and says, I'm going to restrict 8 of my 66 units to very low income renters or buyers, that developer is allowed to add those 17 units that are in blue to the maximum of 66. So now you've taken a maximum of 66 units and you've converted it to 83, did you say?
Yeah.
83 units because of the 8 units in the red.
On the same lot size,
On the same acreage
parcel.
size.
acreage size.
Yeah. Obviously, in a R1 zone, it's 4 lots per acre, 6 lots per acre. So, you know, we're taking a situation where there's going to be multiple units,
Right.
larger size piece of property.
Yeah.
So you can see in this illustration, they're almost getting, the density bonus is adding 24% to the total number of units that they could otherwise have on that property without the
Right, no, I get it.
affordable
Yeah.
units.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
I do, so.
So
moving on.
that calculation goes all the way through very low, low, moderate income, depending on what those red units are going to be. That drives what the formula is going to allow for the density bonus units.
Okay. But the color red applies to low, medium, or
Well, in this
for bonus in this example.
in this illustration, it's very low, right?
It's low income.
It's low
Just
income.
low income.
Just low
So
income.
if they were very low,
Yeah.
you would see more blue units.
Yes.
Because the way the math works out.
Then the math is different for very low as
True.
it is for low as it is for moderate.
Yes.
Yes,
All
that's
right,
my next example. So I did want to present an example with a specialized.
Oh,
Sure.
wait a minute, Mrs. Lewis, go ahead.
So just for my clarification, these particular units on this example that you've given us is on a certain lot size based on what the sample offers as low density, low income. So does that mean that the project is going to be taller? I'm not sure, because if there wasn't anything there, if there were no low densities, you still have, let's say, 5 acres to put apartments on. But because you're getting this bonus and the bonus density, does that mean that they're going to be more compact and the building is going to be taller?
Less open space.
Okay.
Wait a minute, Mr. Vaughn.
Because those are the other incentives. The other incentives are, once they get their bonus, you have to give them an incentive through the way of waivers of building standards to allow them to put all these units on this piece of property.
Okay. So that may mean that there won't be green space or.
True, or you could
Or
have,
setbacks.
say they were like duplexes, they would have less front yard, less backyard, maybe they're stacked 2-story, something like that.
Okay.
Whereas without this density bonus, they would be stuck with those 66 units would be the max. So there are other incentives that allow them waivers of the building standards to make this work for them. So if the physical layout of the land doesn't work for them with this many units, they're entitled to ask for incentives and waivers of building standards to make it work for them.
So the more acreage that a particular owner may have, and the more low, moderate, or very low income housing they want to provide, the bigger their density bonus is, which means that.
Up to a max.
Up to a max of 30% or 33?
Yeah, I think it's 30% on.
And so it wouldn't be based on their acreage, it's based on the amount of target units they're providing. So the amount of low income units that they're going to provide, or very, very low, or whatever specialized type units they provide, So it wouldn't be based on their acreage.
Yes,
Well,
if-
that 30% is incremental depending on the size of the lot.
Yeah, it taps out. So if
Yeah.
there were more red squares in this illustration, you would see more blue squares as well. So the number of total units would expand to a maximum depending on how many red squares you had.
And I was just trying to imagine this in my mind because some of the samples that were in the package showed green space and, you know, they were 2-story, some
So one of the
taller
big,
than that, and
yeah,
one looked like a hospital, so.
one of the biggest incentives is parking,
Yeah,
is the decrease in the parking
well,
requirements.
that's if you're close to public transportation,
I think that's one of the incentives.
yeah, to decrease parking.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay. So the next illustration, the next example is a specialized example. So with these particular units, it's for at least 10%. I need to go back. It's for at least 10% of the proposed units are designated for very low income for 55 years and are targeted for the specialized housing types that the following example applies to. So this particular project is special in that it's for very low income. The duration is for 55 years, so it's deed restricted for 55 years, and it's targeted for specialized housing. So it's suggesting 66 rental units. 7 of the units are very low income, and they're restricted for 55 years, the deed restriction for disabled veterans. So you would have to meet that special housing bracket. It could be for homeless, foster youth. So there is a special qualifying factors. And then what you would take to figure out the percentage of the affordable units and the specialized, it's those 7 units that they're providing divided by 66 units, equals 10.6, and any fraction thereof, like I said before, you automatically round up. So it'd be 11% of the units are affordable. So the eligibility density bonus for specialized housing bonus would be 20% of the 7 units. And then the standard bonus, it's that 11% because they were very low income units. They were for very low income, so they automatically get the 35% of the 66 units. So if you just take the total density bonus just for the specialized housing, you take that 20% times 7, which would equal 1.4 units. Rounding up, they would get 2 units just for the total specialized housing. And then for the standard density bonus, they would add the 35% times 66 units, 23.1 units. Automatically, you would round that one up as well. So
24 units?
yes, it would be 24
Okay.
units. I know my math was wrong there. It's 24 units. So it's 59 market rate, 7 specialized, and 24. It's actually should be 26. Thank you, Mayor, for catching that. On the specialized plus the standard, because you have the 24 plus the 2 units. And this is just an illustration to show the yellow's market rate. You have a few very low income units, and then you get the rest, which is the blue, which is the density bonus.
And they could be at market rate?
They can be at market
Yes.
rate.
Okay.
And that's the incentive technically to the developer, that they get more units now.
So does this regulation, if passed, stop in any way the council from saying that by ordinance or regulation that we would like cameras and security?
No, it would not. This ordinance is just in accordance with state law to require density bonus, and it's just to allow the building of more units on a particular project.
So if we brought back an ordinance that said that all new housing developments or apartment developments, all new, everything that comes forward from this point has to have camera and security, they would have to abide by it.
Well, there is a glitch there, and that is if you create a barrier, an economic barrier to the penciling out for the developer, they can eliminate those types of conditions.
So if it's a development standard that is economically infeasible is what the
For
city
them
attorney
to,
is saying.
yeah, for them to provide these because of the conditions that you're conditioning onto the project, you have to waive those conditions.
Well, they could come back and say that, and we're going to have what we have now, where people are not going to feel safe in living in some of these large development areas. And it's a catch-22. Anyone could come back and say that they can't afford it because of this.
No, they have to do like an economic cost study to show you what condition they can't meet and why that makes the project not pencil out. So
But that would just be for the units in red, correct?
No, for the whole project. The units in red are only signifying which ones in this example
be
are
low income,
very
yeah.
low.
Uh-huh.
The yellow, and all of them are specialized units. They could be for veterans, I forget what the other,
Youth, foster youth.
youth, foster
and
youth.
homeless.
And that's what gives them the big bonus.
Right. So who would make the determination whether this will pencil out for them or not? When they get a bonus like this of all these units and the money they're going to make?
Well, ultimately, depending on what the underlying entitlement is, either the planning commission or the city council would decide whether or not it meets the legal standard.
Okay, good enough for me. All right. Yes. And one more thing. At some point, I want to bring back an ordinance to include this. Mr. Jones?
Will this hinder any, if we have any design changes for neighborhood setbacks, road width, space between houses, things like that?
That's a incentive. It's a concession that the developer can apply for. They can apply for relief from development standards, so they can get relief from those setbacks, from architectural standards that we have. That's a part of this that you'll see as a part of a concession they can apply for.
Okay, thank you.
Doesn't have to be granted, though, does it?
Well, again, there's certain hurdles you have to get over to deny those incentives. It's
Okay, I just don't want to see we've got enough crummy, unattended apartments as it is.
So one thing to keep in mind, this is already the law. This is the default. All we're doing is putting it together in the form of an ordinance so that we can administer it. And we set up a process within the ordinance to do that.
Okay.
If we didn't have this ordinance, this would
I
be
know.
the law
It
no
defaults
matter
to
what.
state, yeah. Okay. Go ahead, Stacy, sorry.
Okay, no problem. So the duration of affordability for rental projects for very low and low income units, the duration is for 55 years or longer if required by construction or mortgage financing assistance program, mortgage insurance program, or rental subsidy program. So say it had California tax credits, it may be longer than 55 years if it's subsidized in a special way. But at the minimum, it would have to be deed restricted for 55 years for very low and low income units. And then for sale projects for very low, low, and moderate income units, the initial occupant must qualify on the basis of their income and equity sharing agreement unless in conflict with the requirements of another public funding source or law. So they'd have to have an agreement unless they're unable to due to some law. Concessions or incentives. The reduction in site development is one of the standards or a modification of zoning code requirements or architectural design requirements that exceed the minimum building standards that would otherwise be required that result in identifiable and actual cost reductions to provide for affordable housing costs or for rents for the targeted units to be affordable. So they can ask for a reduction in development standards or a modification from our zoning code requirements, which that would be setbacks. If they're able to identify that the project doesn't pencil out, that they wouldn't be able to provide affordable housing. Next would be approval of mixed use zoning for a housing project if commercial, office, industrial, or other land uses will reduce the cost of the housing development, and if the commercial, office, industrial, or other land uses are compatible with the housing project and the existing or planned development in the vicinity of the project. So they can get a mixed-use project and incorporate commercial and industrial into the project if it's compatible with the area and if that will help the project pencil out. And then last, if other regulatory incentives or concessions proposed by the developer or the city that result in identifiable and actual cost reductions to provide for affordable housing costs or for the targeted units to be affordable. So that just gives the jurisdiction the ability to provide its own incentive or concession. So there is a special criteria for child care facilities. They're eligible for an additional density and incentives. They can either get an additional density bonus, that is the amount of square feet of residential space that is equal to or greater than the amount of square feet of the child care facility, or an additional incentive that contributes significantly to the economic feasibility of the construction of the child care facility. So they can ask for either of those, but it's only one. And the condition the following to occur. So if it is a child care facility, the city then can condition it to do the following: that it remain in operation for a period as long or longer than the density bonus required to remain affordable, and that the children who attended the child care facility shall equal a percentage that is equal to or greater than the percentage of dwelling units that are required for very low income households. So it needs to balance out. It needs to equal. So if that child care facility is going to have a density bonus, it's going to be granted a density bonus because of the child care facility, then the children that attend need to equal the percentage of the very low income households that are within that development.
Is this a staffed childcare facility?
Yeah, this would be like a childcare facility in a condominium complex or an apartment complex.
But I mean, it wouldn't be staffed by volunteers.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, this would be a part of the complex.
So if part of the complex provided childcare for their residents, then they're entitled to a density bonus equal to the square footage of the childcare facility.
Sure. No.
that
I
they provide.
understand that. But I just want to know who's going to run this childcare facility.
Yeah,
So
it would be managed by the complex.
it would be managed by the complex. Okay. All right.
Okay, so calculating concessions and incentives. So there's none for senior housing because they're given such a high percentage of density bonus, land donation or housing for transitional, foster youth, disabled, veterans, or homeless. You can get one concession if it's for 5% very low, 10% low, 10% moderate, and child care facility. You can get two if it's a very low, low, or moderate project, or you can get three incentives if it's for very low, low to moderate, but you have to meet those percentage thresholds.
So could those be for senior housing?
So
If you offer low or very low, and it's like, and you designate 55 or older, can you do that?
So they wouldn't be given a concession in terms of, like, say, reduction in development standards or modification in zoning if it's for senior, if it's for a land donation, or it's housing transitional, foster youth, disabled, veterans, or homeless. They're already given a specialized addition and density bonus. So if you're providing for the affordability sector, you're given 1, 2, or 3 concessions or incentives based on the percentage that you're providing. And those concessions were the 2 slides before this, before I got into the child care facilities.
Okay.
Okay?
I think where I'm confused, if it's very low, low or moderate, the 5 to 10% to 10%, or 2, 10, 20, and 20, what I'm asking is that a person for very low, you're not restricted on who you can rent that property to, are you?
it has to be a very low income. They have to be income qualifying.
If they're income qualifying and they're 55 or older, is that still okay?
So if,
Or did it have to be younger than a senior citizen and income qualify?
so to get the very low income, so to say they were gonna provide 15% very low and they wanted 3 in concessions,
Yeah,
they wouldn't even need to designate it as senior housing. Senior housing has its own,
right.
has
So,
its own
so the
concessions.
age restriction is meaningless then, as long as it's very low qualifying.
The concessions are really targeted to get the affordable housing for very low, and moderate.
Income-based as opposed to
Income-based.
age-based.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
So these are examples of essentially the concession incentive denial. Let's go back. So when available, when a given development standard would have the effect of physically precluding the construction of a development qualifying for a density bonus at the densities or with the concessions incentives permitted, number that may be requested, no limit required in the statute. Oh, excuse me, I'm totally jumped ahead. You guys are, I totally apologize. Requested concession, so going back, I totally apologize. Requested concession or incentive must be granted unless it would, 1, not result in identifiable and actual cost reductions to provide for affordable housing costs or for rents for the targeted units to be set as required, or 2, have a specific adverse impact, or 3, be contrary to state or federal law. So those are the only 3 areas where the city would be able to deny a concession incentive request. Challenges to denials or incentives. The city denial or a requested incentive may be challenged in court. If the court finds against the city, the challenging party may be entitled to requested incentive and the reasonable attorney fees and costs. So waiver reductions or development standards. This is given when available. It's when a given development standard would have the effect of physically precluding the construction of a development qualifying for a density bonus at the densities or with the concessions incentives permitted. So what that's saying is that when it's available, we could give a waiver and reduction of the development standards if with the density bonus, they're not able to fit those units in and they need a relief, say in setbacks. When it's available, it can be given. The number that may be requested, there's no limit. So say they wanted to reduce setbacks to 0 lot line, there is no limit. They could ask for 0. Unlike concessions and incentives where they're capped at a maximum of 3. And it must be given unless it would not be necessary to avoid physically preclude construction, have specific adverse impact for which no feasible means to satisfactorily mitigate or avoid adverse impact on real property or registered historical resource, and be contrary to state or federal law. So it's very narrow on what the city can deny. Challenges to denials, as stated, if a request for a waiver is asked and then we're challenged in court for denying it, and the court finds against the city, the challenging party may be entitled to not only getting that waiver that they requested, but also reasonable attorney's fees and costs being reimbursed. So parking requirements, that's a special concession that can be given. And there's a general rule that one space is required for 0 to 1 bedroom. And so this is the rule given for a density bonus project. So if they have a 0 to 1 bedroom unit, they only are required to have 1 space. If it's 2 to 3 bedrooms, 2 spaces. If it's 4 or more bedrooms, 2.5 spaces. So a developer can ask for a reduction if it's available for specific projects. And this is an exception to the general rule. They can ask for a half space per bedroom And this is based on the certain percentages that they were to provide. They can ask for a 3rd%, so a third less per unit if it's special needs or it's paratransit or unobstructed access to a fixed bus route is nearby. And they can ask for half of the spaces that are required if they're entirely a rental project, low income affordable, or they're either near a transit stop or it's a senior project with paratransit or unobstructed access to a fixed bus route.
So Stacy, let's say they build this near a residential area. How do we explain to the neighbors if a family were 2 or more bedrooms or 3 bedrooms and they show up with 3 cars and they're impacting the neighborhood by parking all these cars on the street because they don't have to have off-street parking? And the residents can't park cars in front of their house because they're impacted because the state says that we have to do this.
So, I mean, typically in these types of projects, they're going to be high density projects, and we are very selective of where those high density projects can be located. You typically want a buffer area. You don't want them necessarily in the neighborhood, although, however, our housing element is now requiring us to disperse high density units throughout the city. So the city would just be looking, staff would be analyzing it on a compatibility basis. And we are restricted that we cannot, if they meet these qualifications, we cannot deny that project for that reduction. So we would be looking at ways to help mitigate the neighborhood. And this would be, the only type of qualifying project would be a high density project, typically, that would be at its maximum, wanting additional density, and then on top of it, asking for reduction in this type of standard.
Mrs. Lewis?
Thank you. And correct me if I'm wrong, Stacy or Mr. Vaughn, some of these mitigating situations for these density bonus requests, like paratransit, public transportation nearby so that they don't have to provide the parking. Since we're not like that here in the Valley at this point, you're looking at the Bay Area. Do those things still apply to them? And if we don't have that available to our residents, does that mean that in this density bonus ruling that they have to provide parking for those residents in order to build those units?
So they would have to provide what's the general rule. And then they can get a further reduction in the spaces based on those line items below, which are close to paratransit or other transit stops. So if you look at the general rule, if you have a 1-bedroom unit, 0 to 1-bedroom unit, studio to 1-bedroom unit, and you're a density bonus project, you have to provide 1 space for that unit. And you're right, we don't have major transit stops or those types of things where they're going to have access to the lower spaces below that. And no, we don't have to provide those stops just to fit into that.
Okay, so that means that they would have to provide the parking for the residents.
Based on the general rule.
General rule, yes.
So if
Okay.
they had like I said, if they had a studio or a 1-bedroom unit, and that was all they were providing within their development, they would have to provide 1 space per unit in their development.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wrapping it up. This is the end. The city's role in implementation. Cities must adopt a local ordinance that specifies how compliance with statute will be implemented. And as previously stated, failure to adopt a local ordinance does not relieve a city from complying with the state statute. The state statute is technically the default and in place currently right now. So the proposed density bonus ordinance would replace the existing density bonus ordinance. It incorporates statute by reference. It provides a menu of incentives for consideration by developers and it assists the city in carrying out our Housing Element Program 8B for zoning incentives for senior housing developments such as reduced parking standards, reduced unit sizes, increased heights, and increased maximum lot coverage. And so that concludes my presentation, and the city attorney and I are available to answer questions.
So these types of developments are very popular in very densely populated areas, like the Bay Area, San Francisco. They're not as popular in a suburban area like Los Banos, where,
It's not you.
oh, where there's lots of space. And we don't have a lot of infill type development going on with these types of developments. So we don't anticipate there being a rush to the counter to see these types of developments. But there could be, and we want to be prepared for them by having the right regulations on our books so that we can walk through what it is we need to do from a legal standpoint to allow or deny these types of density bonus projects. So I think in the 15 or so years I've been here, I think we've only had like 2 density bonus projects.
Yeah, we can open a police substation at one of them.
All of them.
That's what I want to avoid. I want people to have a safe place to live.
So keep in mind, these developments are only a percentage of the market rate units. So you're not talking about a development that's going to have 100 low income units, because there's a maximum in terms of a density bonus, because there's a maximum to the bonus they can get. So it's going to be market units and low income units within the overall development. So you're not going to have, this isn't going to encourage the type of development where you have 100% low, very low, lower income type units all in the same place. It's encouraging a percentage of those units. So if you go back and look at that example, you'll notice that out of 66 units, there's only 8 target units, and the rest are market rate units.
Right,
So-
right. And I don't want to get the impression that because they're low income, that those are the individuals that start trouble. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the lack of management, once these apartments are built, and how they're managed, and what the city has neglected over all these years, because then we have to go back in afterwards and clean up the mess, whether it's high, medium, or low income. And that's why this council needs to set the stage to make sure that we have a good apartment complex that continues to be a good apartment complex. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying, is that I don't want to be restricted to the point that we can't make it a place where people want to live, and a safe place. That's all. And I don't care if they're low, medium, or high income. That's not the difference. All good people. What the problem is that sometimes the combinations of different personalities and the lack of management is the real problem. All right. Mrs. Santos.
Thank you. Stacy, on one of the pages you had mentioned waivers. Excuse me. I know some time ago we were having an applicant come up to us about how they've forgotten some of the waivers. So I just wanted to make sure, so we don't have any issues with that in the future. Is it clearly stated and understood is it clearly is it clearly stated and understood that the fees and everything should be paid as is, and so there isn't issues for that for later?
So that is an eligibility. That is a part of the development standards that could be asked, could be development fees. And that is an eligibility that is within the density bonus. So that is something that could come forward to to the council or to, which, it depends on if the planning commission is the decision-making authority, or to the city council, if the city council is the decision-making authority, but that could be a request as a part of a waiver.
Thank you.
Mr. Freya?
So this ordinance, though, is essentially a mirror of the state ordinance, and we don't have an option, we have to pass this, right?
So the only thing that is of our own making is the process, is the application, how long you wait for the department to respond to your application, how it goes through the process. So that is not set forth by state law, other than to say you will come up with a process that doesn't cause barriers for people to process these types of developments. So in terms of the processing part of the ordinance, those are things that we have prepared. The nuts and bolts of how many percentages get you how many percentages and all that kind of stuff, that is exactly a mirror of this huge ordinance that we tried to put into our huge statute that we tried to put into our ordinance so it's readable and understandable by the people, by the city employees who will be administering it. So in answer to your question, yes and no.
As far as the density levels and all that,
Yeah, as far as
that's state
that's state law.
mandated. How we run it through our bookkeeping
What
system
the
is ours.
application looks like,
Okay.
what our housing agreement's going to look like with the developer to make sure that the units are deed restricted. Those are all things that we've done.
Okay.
But the nuts and bolts of what you see here is what the state law is. So if we had an applicant come to the counter tomorrow with one of these projects, we don't have an ordinance that fits the state law yet. And we would
Okay.
have to follow the state law.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
Actually, I pressed that right before you made the comment. It does come down to management on those properties. If they're managed well, you shouldn't have any issues. You shouldn't notice the difference, whether they're low income or market rate rentals. It just comes down to management, and hopefully these developers that may come in the future realize on apartments it's best to assign parking and to make sure their on-staff property management checks for that to regulate that there's not a bunch of extra cars that are not needed in there. So, thank you.
We don't waive the police and fire fees, correct? Oh, I turn.
So I'm not clear, I'm not clear on answering that question as to whether we're required to give financial incentives or not. I can get back to you on that. I think there is some part of the code I remember dealing with that talked about you did not have to do financial waivers.
No.
And it's not in
For a
our
special
ordinance,
district.
but I can get you a specific answer to that.
Okay, so.
Whatever the law is, that's the law. I just don't have it at the tip of my tongue right now.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if we have to waive fire and police fees, that just puts us even more in the hole.
I think there's a portion of the statute that says those are not the type of waivers that the city is required to give, although we could in our discretion if we wanted to. That's what I believe the law is, but I will follow that up with a memo to you to confirm that.
So Stacy, if someone, like the apartment complex that we talked about, that we passed, and the owner's going to put in cameras and security, right? So do we need an ordinance to require that of every property? Or can we just do that as each individual plan comes up? And then we talk about penciling it in later if they come back and they complain that it's too much money and they have to prove that to us. If we're fair and consistent with everybody.
Well, we should have a policy then, so it is fair and consistent with everyone. We would take care of, that would be an operational aspect of the development, and we could take care of that within the operations. However, if this is a standard that the city council would want to set, we should create a policy and would essentially guide a developer to what is required and what the city's expectation is of how this standard would be applied to all developments.
But it can come up at the time of the approval of the complex.
I think it's within our design standards now.
It is within our
Very
design
generally
Okay.
speaking regarding security, not having entrances facing fences and parking areas where they're unlit. So we do have design standards that deal with security in multifamily developments. I
Okay.
don't think there's anything that specifically says you
Cameras.
will have a camera, but it does talk about how to orient the buildings so that you're not creating dead spaces for people to walk through that are a danger to them.
So the answer would be yes, if that could be a part of the requirement
Yeah, I
of the
think-
building permit.
I think so.
Okay, all right, and I'm good with that. Thank you. Mrs. Lewis?
Thank you. Stacy, I think, and Mrs. Santos, I think the reference that she was making was about our senior complex when there was some incentive money there. They wanted to waive the fees for police and fire, and we didn't do it. And rightfully so, because I found out when they had their ribbon cutting that there had been quite a bit of activity of our fire department being out there because seniors have a lot of medical issues and they require help. So that would be something that I hope that's stable in our ordinance, and we would not be looking at waiving that for any complex. And I hope that the state doesn't have anything written in that cities have to do something like that.
I believe there's a bill right now in Sacramento.
That's not unlikely.
It's going to do exactly that. It's going to decrease or waive those types of development fees for senior housing.
So that means that the services have to be provided regardless of whether you have the money to do it or not.
So the emphasis in Sacramento has been over the last 3 years is affordable housing and how to make it more affordable, how to build up the housing stock. That's been the focus of the legislature, and so they are tinkering with all those types of things and trying to come up with solutions to what they believe to be a housing crisis in California. And so I do believe I saw in one of my advanced sheets that one of the bills that's being considered is development impact fees for senior housing or transitional youth type housing of something less than what the impact fee actually is. So, and an actual waiver, I believe.
Okay, but at this point, we're still on target
Yes,
until that happens.
at this point, that
Okay.
hasn't come down the pike, but we may be coming to you with another ordinance next year with that.
Why come to us with the ordinance? Why don't you, the state's running the place. Mr. Freya?
One more question. Are every city in the state essentially, are they required to do this? Or this
Well,
ordinance?
it's funny because I looked at a lot of ordinances in drafting this one, and I would say right now there's a 50-50 mix, but those that don't have ordinances like us, the default is the state statute.
Okay.
So I don't know why they don't. I mean, they're very expensive to write. It took like about 8 weeks of work to write this one. And so that's probably why. And every time you get ready to write your ordinance, there's a flurry of 3 or 4 new bills that change everything. So we have been waiting. We're actually 2 years behind the curve in terms of the last legislation on this. We were waiting to see if there was going to be any more. And so we thought now's the time is right to get ours on the books.
I was just curious whether we're going to see Los Altos and Saratoga and Los Gatos
my
all of a
question.
sudden start building higher density housing.
Well, I think you are, well, just anecdotally, if you drive down El Camino in the peninsula now, you're starting to see 3- and 4-story multifamily units along what used to be a commercial row. And if you look really closely, no parking because they're all near like transit stops like Caltrain and so on
The
and
train
so
runs
forth.
along the El Camino
I-
now.
I have family lives in San Carlos, and they're building lots of multifamily. Now, I don't know whether they're density bonus units.
But they are building multifamily
They're
units there.
building multifamily units,
Okay,
just
so-
because of the affordability of the Bay Area.
And so that's finally happening.
So I think the crush is going to be more in those areas than in the areas like Los Banos.
Well, I just want to make sure that everyone, particularly the Bay Area, starts picking up its housing requirements for all the jobs it creates. instead of,
Yeah, I think they're being more aggressive with
letting
their
us
housing
bear that
elements
load.
in those areas than they have been in the past.
And that's good to see. Thank you.
And I did want to clarify on the subject of, what cities have an ordinance and what don't. Well, all cities are required to have a housing element to be in compliance with the state, and this is needed for the city of Los Banos to ensure our compliance with our housing element. One of our requirements are to be in compliance with the state of California and their housing laws, and so this will help solidify our compliance.
Thanks.
But it doesn't mean we have to change the zoning on certain properties if it's going to impact like a neighborhood.
Yes, there's nothing says we're changing zoning. We're
Okay.
changing the density within a
No,
established
I
zone.
understand that, but then if we don't have the property for R2 and R3, and someone comes to us and said, I'll build this complex if you change the zoning in this area.
So
Well, the
that's
housing
something
element,
different.
yeah, it's a totally different
Yeah.
story.
Yes.
That has nothing to do with density bonus, but has everything to do with what HCD is requiring us to do in our housing element, which is do exactly what you're saying.
Right.
Yes, and we do have to do that. It's called the unaccommodated need. So we have not, essentially what the housing element says is that each city has to accommodate, we have to be accommodating to multifamily. And it takes that percentage, it calculates and analyzes how much R1 and R2 and R3 you have in your community. And if you have a shortfall based on the state's criteria, you have to convert. And that's an unaccommodated need. So you need to accommodate.
Right, but we're not going to wreck a neighborhood that's basically all R1 and it has a patch of land in there.
No.
And then someone comes to us and says, you convert this instead of going out in another area of all part of town that it's not going to impact an R1 zone.
It would still require a general plan amendment and a zone change that would be at the discretion of the
Of the city
council.
council.
And we would analyze and make sure it was compatible with the
Okay,
area.
all right, okay, that answers my question. All right, Mrs. Lewis?
I don't think I have any further questions.
Okay. Anybody have any more questions? Okay, if not, does this require a public hearing too? Yes, it does. All right, so I will now open the public hearing on item number 8B1, ordinance number 1175, amending and restating Article 34, Chapter 3, Title 9 of the Los Banos Municipal Code regarding density bonuses and other affordable housing development incentives. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Yes, sir.
Adam Los Banos. It would seem that this property density would increase utilities that are now at a basic like $129. It's quite expensive, but bringing a lot of revenue for the council or the city of Los Banos. It concerns that it's ghetto, can make it a ghetto. I'd say yes, that half of it, like the young men here, they don't have jobs, they stay at home with their parents, and they are selling lots of drugs, and the drug element is very high. And at these new complex that are gated communities, I've seen that, let's say homeless and driving their shanties into the apartment complexes and selling drugs and setting up operation and just being a nuisance is very high, that they're using their facilities, their pool and gym to clean themselves and just an all-around party. And I've seen this very strongly and know a couple people who I'm not too happy to have known, but it is happening. And security is needed for a lot of these apartments, especially the one on Ward Road, and they need security badly, like now. And I would definitely, that if you guys can recommend background checks for those who are coming in or low income, please do so. Background checks of drug use, of not only for the parents, but the children as well. That their records might be sealed as being minors, but they're getting in a lot of trouble. And then also the impact, like the education that has been received here from the schools, the IQ levels are very low, and below 85, there is no job for anyone who is below 85. And the drug use among minors has increased exponentially. I seen that children now starting meth. They want to try meth at 10 and 12 years old. I mean, it's an epidemic. And this liberal California wants you to, I don't know if this is a sanctuary city, but definitely that's the element that's going to come is more Hispanics that, I mean, sorry if they're not legal, and a decrease in job opportunity for regular, I guess, residents. And that would be only more like it's hard for everyone. I'm serious. Low income, medium income, high income, life is hard for everyone. And thank you. And I thank you for letting me speak here today. And thank you, City Council. And I appreciate you and looking at you over the past, let's say, 3 months, observing. I enjoy seeing that quite a few have efficacy, but I wish it was more. I wish it was more. There's 2 here who have efficacy, and you have it half the time, but I don't see it out of the others. So thank you, though. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to public forum or public hearing? Not seeing anyone, I will now close the public hearing, bring it back to council level. And there are 2 motions, first reading and introduction. So who wants to go for it? Mrs. Santos.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to open the reading for the.
No, waive the
I'm sorry,
first reading.
Waive the first reading, excuse me, of ordinance number 1175.
Hey, do I have a second? Ms. Freya.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Santos, second by Faria for the waiving of the reading of ordinance number 1175. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? None Carried. Mrs. Santos, hang on. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to introduce ordinance number 1175.
Mr. Freya.
Second.
Motion by Santos, second by Faria for the introduction of ordinance number 1175. Director Maloney, roll call?
Faria,
Yes.
Johnson Santos.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Lewis, Valolta,
Yes. Motion carried. Item 9, consideration of ordinance number 1176, amending Title II, Chapter 2, Article 2 of the Los Banos Municipal Code to create a planning commission districts, amend the number of members and manner of appointment and length of terms and absences. And we're going to go to Director Elms? Yes. Not Director, yeah, yes, right, Director Elms. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. This particular presentation has a PowerPoint as well.
Okay. There you go.
Okay. We'll move forward. So just some background on this particular item. Back in September 4th, the City Council asked staff to bring back an ordinance that would decrease the number of planning commissioners from 7 to 5 and change the method of selection, so the interview process, so that it would coordinate with the elected officials in that district, and then strengthen the current absence policy. So the proposed ordinance before you tonight, it first decreases the planning commission from 7 members to 5 members. We'd have 1 planning commissioner from each electoral district and 1 at-large member. We would form an ad hoc committee to interview the applicants, and this would be with the mayor, the community and economic development director, and the city council member of that district. And then the mayor and the mayor pro tem would form an ad hoc committee with the community and economic development director to select an at-large member. And so that's how the interview process would work. Also, the proposed ordinance sets the terms to 4 years. This would follow the terms of the city council and that particular council member in their district. And the at-large member would follow the term of the mayor, which is every 2 years. So implementation, staff is recommending to extend the existing terms that are set to expire on December 31st, 2019. If you can see within your packet, there's 2 members that are set to expire in 2019. And staff is recommending to extend that term one more year until December 31st, 2020, to in line with the upcoming election. So then we would start January 1st, 2021. Planning Commission Districts 1 and 4 would be filled with a 4-year term. Planning Commission Districts 2 and 3 would be filled with a 2-year term because their next election would be in 2 years. And the at-large member would be for 2-year term. And then starting January 1st, 2023, the Planning Commission seats would be filled in accordance with the proposed ordinance. That would mean that District 1 and 4 would have 4-year terms, and District 2 and 3 would have 4-year terms as well in accordance with that council member and the election. So for absences, within the ordinance, we're suggesting providing, and this was based on the council's recommendation and their direction, to provide 3 consecutive absences or 4 absences within a 12-month period would be an automatic forfeiture of a position. The specific ordinance also specifies that this applies to special or adjourned meetings as well. So if those are set and a commissioner does not attend, that would count towards their 3 consecutive absences as well as the 4 within a 12-month period. So with that, staff is recommending that the City Council waive the first reading and introduce ordinance number 1176 by title. And I'm here to that concludes my presentation. I'm here to answer any questions as well as the city attorney. I know that was brief, so if you have any questions, please let me know.
Mrs. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any questions. I would like to make a request in the extension of Districts 1 and 2 because our terms expire at the end of next year. What you're proposing is allowing to have commissioners serving continue on until the next election cycle. I would like to propose that District 1 and District 4, since there are 2 appointments coming up, be allowed to seek appointment for those seats for the district. And then that particular person appointed has the understanding that it'll be a 1-year term served. And that way you can start fresh, and it will allow those 2 council persons to be able to seek out people to sit on the commission for that year. So that's my proposal. That would be the only change that I would like to request, is not to extend those 2 particular seats through 2020, to allow the ones that are expiring in 2019 to be forfeited and given to District 1 and District 4, and allow us to seek an appointment for those seats.
Council members? Questions? Mr. Santos.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. It would be exactly a year that we'd have to wait for them to, I mean, I would technically be okay with them waiting the year just to have them extend since they're already in the position. And plus you're more familiar with the people you're currently working with as well. I would be okay with seeing it finish up that extended year, and then we can start the new process.
Okay. Anyone else?
My only comment is our thought process in doing this was that this would not eliminate any seated person now, and try to get on the right schedule to follow the election. So Mr. Cates and Mr. Higby's terms come up in 19, and if we end them this year, Mr. Cates has nowhere to go. So he would lose his seat. Mr. Higby's from number 1. And so what we were attempting to do was that no one will lose their seat as a result of this, but that they would naturally expire to coincide with the next election cycle, where they would lose their seat if they weren't in the district or an at-large member. So what we were attempting to do was to make sure no one lost their seat before this really kind of got instituted. So that was just the rationale behind how we came up with seating those members per district. So, but certainly the council can do at their pleasure what they want to do, but that would possibly eliminate two people right now at the end of this year. And certainly Mr. Cates would have nowhere to go if we were only seating a 1 and a 4. This is my only comment.
Just one question before we go on. I may have missed this. I'm sorry. I left for a minute. If we can't find anyone in that district, what was the solution?
Keep trying.
Keep in that district?
Yes.
And if no one came forward, then can we go district-wide?
No.
It has to be someone from that district regardless.
It doesn't make sense to sit someone on for 4 years from outside the district, in our view,
Okay.
and that it's really incumbent upon the council person to recruit representatives from their district.
So whatever, we're gonna have 5 different representatives.
So you would have
4.
4 4-year terms coinciding with their particular council person,
Right.
and 1 2-year term coinciding with the mayor's term.
Good. Okay. Lewis?
Yes, so at this particular time, we have 2 expiring in 2019 and 3 in 20. And if we go with what's being proposed now, there'll be all 5 expiring in 20. Now, the 2 that are expiring in December, and I'm just trying to be fair, to anyone in the community, it doesn't mean that they're going to be reappointed to their seat. Someone else could be considered more qualified or what have you. I think it's a misnomer to sit here and propose that because someone sits on the planning commission that they automatically are going to be renewed. So I think it's only fair, and I can't speak for now, Councilmember Santos, I'm speaking for myself. I would like to have that opportunity for the 1 year that I have left to seek and appoint someone to represent my district. And I think that's only fair. And then after that, everything will work itself out and everything will catch up with itself. So that's my proposal.
You want to put that in the form of a motion, Lewis?
So that's set forth in section 6.
Well, do we want to see the second first?
We're going to need to rework the language and come back and reintroduce it with that new language. But what Mrs. Lewis is proposing is to change
Right.
section 6 of the proposed ordinance.
Okay. Well, let's see. I have a couple more comments here. Jones?
I'm sorry, I was still on. Mr. Vaughn answered my question for me. Thank you.
Mr. Priya?
Yeah, I respect Mrs. Lewis's request so that she could have, in the spirit of this new ordinance, that she could have someone from her district. And I completely support that concept. However you want to work it out.
Okay. So.
You can go ahead and vote on how we want to do it.
Yeah,
I'd like to have some clarification
Correct.
as to exactly what the change is.
Okay, Ms. Lewis, would you make a motion with a clarification of what you're asking for?
I understand that you're asking that the 2 terms that expire in December not be extended. I understand that. And then there's a second part of your motion that they be filled with someone residing in which districts?
1 and 4.
1 and 4 for a 1-year term?
Yes. And then 2 years thereafter, after the election.
So this would mean.
Wait a minute, so these are 4-year terms, they can't,
I'm sorry, I was thinking of the mayor. I'm sorry. Yes, 4 years thereafter, so it coincides with whoever gets elected.
Okay, Jones?
Mr. Vaughn, if these are 4-year terms, shouldn't they coincide with our terms?
That's what they're doing.
Okay, I got lost on here. One more time, please.
The mic.
See the
Microphone.
see the attachment to the staff report?
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to explain to him what he's asking.
Here, you can press your button. You're independent. if you-
Sorry. So in 2020, the at-large seat in District 1 and District 4 will be up for election.
Okay,
So
yes.
what we
Okay.
were proposing was, at that time, the at-large seat would be filled by a 2-year term, and the District 1 and District 4 would be filled by 4-year terms. And then 2 years later, the other two would be
Gotcha.
filled.
Okay, perfect.
So everything gets kind of synced together. So it wouldn't be totally operational, so to speak, until 2022.
Perfect. Thank you.
But back to what Mrs. Lewis is saying, she is suggesting not to extend the current 1-year, current terms that are terming out in 2019, and then open up a 1-year position for District 4 and District 1. Is that what I heard?
Okay, who's District 4? Is that the,
That's Mrs. Lewis.
and who's District 1?
That's,
That's me.
That's you?
Yes.
Okay.
and then it would go to however it falls in 2020. Once again, we would be appointing someone for District 1 and District 4 because those happen to be the next two electoral districts. So those two terms that we would be filling in the end of this year would only last for 1 year. Correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I'm not really a fan of changing it the way that you guys have it written right now, because right now I have 3 in my district, and I'd like to have a say on which one stays. I mean, but
Well, we can't do it because the terms, right now, we didn't want to cut someone's term off in the middle of their term. That's why we set it up this way. And we happen to have 2 ending this year, but then we have 3 not ending until 2020. So that's why we're trying to start with a clean slate at the end of 2020, where all 5 seats would term out and you'd have 5 appointments.
I like that.
Stacy, what I worry about is just, for that 1 year, changing and then changing again, for the consistency of you and breaking in a new council, new planning commission for just that short period of time. That's what, because we go through a lot of education with these people. And I'd hate to disrupt it for 1 year, and then they're gonna come due anyway. And I think for consistency, we shouldn't do that with all the training that we've gone through and the money we've spent on these people. So that's the only thing that bothers me, because for 1 year, and then if they don't get reappointed, it bothers me. Mrs. Santos?
Well, I had a question. What time in 2020 would we be looking for, say if we were to not fill that year, and what month in 2020, excuse me, would we be looking for the next?
So
technically-
the election is November of 2020.
Okay.
Excuse me. The election is in November,
Yeah.
and typically the council persons don't take their seats till December.
Yes.
So what we had come up with was in January of 2021 would be when we start the recruiting process for those seats.
Okay.
So the ordinance says the term starts 1/1/2021, right after the election.
So it would
The
start in the
term
new
would
year,
start.
but then we'd still take.
So we could start recruiting, and it's usually that first council meeting is the appointments.
So then it would still be within that year that we would be on council, depending what comes, that we'd be able to look at.
So that's how it,
Okay.
in our view, that's how it would coincide with the elections.
Okay, thank you.
So what we were attempting to do is to have everybody's term end on the same date in terms of the planning commission, and then let the chips fall where they may in terms of filling those seats.
Oh.
But I just want to make sure I get it written down the way you want it. And so I'm understanding what Mrs. Lewis is requesting, if that's what the pleasure of the council is.
Normally, I would agree with this, but it's just changing for such a brief period. And 1 year, again, after all the money we've spent educating these people and to change, I just can't do that to Stacy right now. So,
I feel as though technically there would still be some say had, but if I'm understanding this correctly, there would still be some say had by Ms. Lewis if she chose to still wait that time. So they waited out to that 2020, or if we waited till that, extended that term by another year, because she'd still have some say at least within those last few months, pending what may, sorry. I'm sorry, one more time?
See,
Mrs. Lewis?
The appointments are for whoever gets elected in November of that particular year. So in 2020, whoever gets elected will appoint for District 1 and District 4.
And also in 2020, we will fill the 2 and 3.
Everybody
two-year
gets,
term, because the others are coming, they're terminating. And then 2022, those 2 seats, 3 and 2, will be filled for 4 years. We really thoughtfully staggered this so that we could make that all work. But I'm not saying that we can't do it a different way, however you want to do it. So going back to that attachment, the two that term out in 2019, according to the plan we have now, they would go to 2020. In 2020, all 5 seats would expire. Okay, 2 of those seats would go to 1 and 4. 2 of those seats would go to 3 and 2, and 1 would go to the at-large. But the 2 that go to 3 and 2 would only be for a 2-year term to get them on the right cycle with the 2022 election.
So we'd be changing a couple of people for just 1 year, and then all of them would come due in 2020.
Mr. Mayor, may I please?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
In consideration of time, reluctantly, I'm going to withdraw my request because this is going on too long. And I will withdraw my request to change that so we can move forward with a motion.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Do I have a motion? Mrs. Lewis?
Yes, see what item are we on here?
Item 9.
Yes, for item 9, I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 1176 I'd like to make a motion, where am I here?
Waive the first
Waive
reading.
the first reading for ordinance number 1176.
Mrs. Santos?
Second.
Okay, motion by Lewis, second by Santos for the waiving of the first reading of ordinance number 1176. All in favor? Aye. Mrs. Lewis?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to introduce ordinance number 1176 as read by title.
Mrs. Santos?
Second.
Motion by Lewis, second by Santos for the introduction of ordinance number 1176. Director Maloney?
Maria,
Yes.
Johnson Santos,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Lewis.
Yes.
Peralta,
Yes. Carried unanimously. Item number 10, consideration of approval of City Council Resolution number 6137, adopting major city goals. Alex?
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a couple of slides, so if we could jump to a PowerPoint, please.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. As the council is aware, as part of the city manager's, performance evaluation, we went through a process of developing what I'm going to refer to as some major city goals. I've got the goals listed here. I think I'm going to just run through them real quickly in an abbreviated fashion, just to remind the council of the goals that were developed during that performance evaluation process. Goal number 1, identify and implement programs and projects to address homelessness. Second, conduct a surveillance camera pilot project. Third, address code violations through a comprehensive code enforcement program. Fourth, improve the city's transportation network with a focus on the Pioneer Road Widening Project and the Trail to Merced College. The next is support the development of multifamily housing in the city. Implement Measure H. Work in collaboration with the school district to identify future school sites, create a safe environment or environments for students, and promote joint use of facilities. Next, which is in line with the action taken this evening, in collaboration with the Downtown Merchants Association, revitalize the downtown, continue to focus on economic development. As funding permits, evaluate options for expanding recreation programs, services, and facilities. Evaluate options for a new hospital facility, including identifying options for other service providers. Conduct a review of the municipal code. And lastly, create a tree maintenance program. So again, very quickly, just recapping major city goals that were developed as part of my performance evaluation process. I would anticipate developing what I'll call a work plan matrix for each of these goals with some milestones, dates for milestones for the various goals, and coming back to you as the council probably in December with an update on the staff's progress on each of these goals. So with that, available for questions, and would recommend adoption of the attached resolution. So that's it, Mayor.
Okay. Questions from council? I think we've gone over these goals many times. Does anyone have any questions? Have a motion? Mrs. Lewis?
I have questions.
Yes.
Now, coming back to council, I assume with some sort of prioritization, are you going to be working with council on this, or are you going to be deciding on your own what's going to be the priority?
Well, I would take the direction that was given during that performance evaluation that these are the priorities. And we would pursue these projects based on that conversation.
Okay, when you say we, that's what I'm trying to identify, is that we've given you the goals, but I guess what I'm seeing is now how do we work with you as a city manager to set the priority as to how we see this as being priority? Which ones are the things that we need to tackle first, and which ones that, maybe some of the things we've done tonight may have already taken care of some of the priorities?
Right. We would be tackling all of them. And so within each goal, there would be, take for example, revitalizing the downtown. There would be a number of tasks that would roll up into that overall goal. One of those tasks, you're right, we did accomplish this evening, would be the creation or formation of the PBID. So there would be other action items related to that goal that would roll up into that goal. So maybe I'm not tracking your question very well, but those are all priorities. We would be working to accomplish them all on the basis of them being identified as a priority for the city council.
Okay. So again, what I'm saying is we've outlined the priorities. Are you saying that you're going to be working with staff to determine how the priority is going to be formulated, or do you plan to work with council? How do you plan to do this?
I would say both. So those are the priorities, and we will move forward with implementing those priorities based on the direction to the city manager from the council.
All right.
Okay. Mr. Jones?
I'm sorry, remove mine there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion? Any other questions? Mrs. Santos?
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 6137, adopting major city goals.
Mr. Jones?
Second that.
Motion by Santos, second by Jones to approve resolution number 6137. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? None carried. Okay, let's go on to item 11. Consideration and approval of City Council Resolution Number 6138, approving the Fourth Amendment to the City Manager Employment Agreement as it pertains to increase the salary, the annual salary based by 5%. And this is a contractual issue that we've dealt with, and now we're bringing this forth to open session. Any questions by council? Mr. Lewis?
Yes, I'd like to propose this to our our city attorney. The mayor has indicated that we discussed this as in regards to a contractual measure, meeting. Can there be any further discussion about this on the dais, or is it set in concrete?
You can discuss this matter before you vote.
Okay. The question that I want to ask, and I need clarification on this, and I'll propose this to Sonia and to our, Mrs. Melanie, in regards to the contractual portion of this 5%. And I'm, help me out here if I'm not clear, stating this appropriately. But was this part of the contract, the 5%, or was this something that was added onto the contract?
The part that is contractual is on page 8, is on page of the original agreement dated, is there a date? It's on page 2 under salary and benefits,
Page
3A. That's the section that talks about salary.
I believe it's based on a satisfactory or higher evaluation.
So it does, it states employees' annual base salary shall be increased 5% effective July 1st, 2017, and 5% effective July 1st, 2018. In addition to the increase set forth herein, the city council may grant in its sole discretion an increase in the annual base salary. Employees' annual base salary may only be reduced, that's the different subject. So it appears as though the number that Lucy the page number that Lucy just referred to in the original contract specifies a 5% increase for 2017 and 18, and in addition to any increases above and beyond those 2 years are at the discretion of the city council.
Okay. So is this in line with what we've done generally in the past with our city managers once, the contractual part is over? And I guess what I'm trying to figure out is if we're keeping this in line with our department heads and not, giving something that's way above what they're getting.
I think that the difference here is that with the 5% increase, so there's a current range that's set right now. Hold on. On the next staff report, I think it refers to it. The current range is capped at 17,425. This would take you above that. So the next staff report, if this one is passed, would increase the cap from 17,425 to 17,833. So with the salary range that is currently in the salary schedule, it looks like that's about a 2.5% increase. This would add an additional 2.5% to that to make it 5. Have we done it in the past? I don't know. I think that a former city manager's range was changed for market. Yeah, well, speak up if you know. And as far as any other department heads, I don't know. Since I've been here, we've had
where we just stopped it, capped it, but we have made increases to ranges based on COLA increases that other miscellaneous employees get.
Which is the 2.5%?
Depending on what the year
3%?
is, like this past year, the current fiscal year, we increased ranges by 3% consistently for all unrepresented employees, which includes management, which would be department heads as well.
Okay, so our department heads received a 3% increase
Correct.
rather than 5.
No, this is two separate things. So they would get their range would change with a COLA increase.
Yes.
Their range doesn't necessarily change with a merit increase. So some department heads, if they're still stepping, we call it, could possibly receive a 5% increase and the 3% increase. Depending on where they are in the range, they can receive nothing because they might be capped out. They can receive 2.5% to get them to the cap, or they can receive a full 5% usually. I don't think that anybody's ever received more than a 5%.
But that's different, with our city manager because that's contractual.
Yes, the city manager is contractual and 2 other department head positions are contractual. The remaining 1, 2, 3, 4 are at will. I'm sorry.
A contract,
yes.
just regular
Yes.
employees? Yes. Okay. So the 2 that we have that are at will, will they fall under the same type of premises as what we're doing with our city manager?
It would depend on the situation, and that would pretty much be up to the city manager to make that recommendation.
Yeah, I think the difference there is you're in charge of the contract for the city manager, and the city manager would be in charge of the contract for the department heads.
We only hire 2 people, city attorney and city manager.
So
yes, I know that.
The difference is it probably says at the discretion of the city manager versus at the discretion of the city council.
Okay.
That's without looking at the contract, that's would be my assumption.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure that, we're not going beyond what the contract says, and that's,
I would.
I didn't, our city attorney?
So,
Okay.
so Sonia pointed you to the clause that allows you to do this if you so choose to do this tonight, which is you have the discretion to basically give a merit increase. You didn't have the discretion for 2017 and 2018 because it was automatic within the contract, but then the contract has language allowing you at your discretion to continue to give increases. So you're not going beyond what the contract says if you were to do this tonight. So if you look at the provision that Sonia pointed out to you, it was very specific when we negotiated this way back when, that there would be 2 5% increases, annual increases. And then in addition to that, it was negotiated that there could be increases beyond that in additional years at the discretion of the city council. And that was set up, I remember negotiating this, it was set up to allow for merit increases beyond 2018, which we're now in 2019.
Right, and I understand, that part I do understand. It's just, the percentage that I'm looking at, and I want to make sure that, at least for me, that we're not, going somewhere way out of line with our other department head managers. And I know that, I think when we hired the previous one for marketing purposes, that we had to have a certain range of percentage, I think it was.
Actually, with the previous city manager, we hired him with the existing range, and while he was city manager, we fixed it to market.
Okay. I think if I could say anything in the future, this council should make sure that we have all this information when we're making our decision. That's important. And I personally, I would need to have a clear understanding of all that before I'm making a decision, rather than just arbitrarily saying, this is a percentage raise that we're going to give someone based on a request. I want to see all of that stuff in writing to make sure that I'm clear on that and have it explained. And, whether, since, we have financial people in our department, we have Lucy that deals with the contracts. I think that's important for us to hear that information and understand it clearly before we move forward. And that didn't happen. And so I just think for the future that this council needs to make sure and understand clearly what they're doing before they step in and do it. And that's all that I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, I was under the impression this was a contractual agreement based on a satisfactory performance review. I mean, we always talk about that we don't have money for a lot of things. We don't have money for our staff, our police, raises that we desperately need to get to them. But we find money for department heads for increases. I'm just not a fan of that at all. So that's all I have to say.
So where are we? Any other comments?
Any other comments? Okay. Mrs. Lewis?
Yes, the only comment that I have is to remain consistent with our department heads, and since we're out of contract, is to make it a 3% rather than 5%. And that's, that's at the council's discretion, but that would be my recommendation.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion for me.
Do I have a second? Mr. Jones?
I'll second that.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? No. Okay, do I have a new motion? Motion fails. Mrs. Santos?
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 6139. I'm sorry, 6138. I do apologize.
Ms. Freya?
Second.
Motion by Santos, second by Faria. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, Ms. Lewis? Oh, Ed, you want to pose? Okay. All right, motion passes 3-2. Item number 12, consideration of approval of City Council Resolution number 6139, amending Division 4 salary schedule, employee classifications relating to Section A, administration, city manager. And this is because it's, we're bringing this forward because the range is, it would be out of range. And so we approved a 5% raise, and now we had to approve the new range if that the council so desires. Questions? Do I have a motion? Ms. Freya?
Yes, I'll move to adopt City Council Resolution number 6139 as read by title.
Ms. Santos?
Second.
Motion by Faria, second by Santos to approve City Council Resolution number 6139. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay. Motion passes 3-2. Item number 13, advisement of public notices. We have 2 reports. Director Elms?
Yes. The first item is for the First Baptist Church. It's a site plan review for the installation of a modular structure totaling 2208 square feet with site improvements. This is located at 809 D Street. And the second item is for a Type 41 alcohol license for the on sale of beer and wine in conjunction with an eating place. And this is located at 1101 F Street. Both public hearings will be held on Wednesday, October 9th at 7 p.m. here in the council chambers. And that concludes my report.
Okay. Let's go on to item number 14, City Manager's report.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Let's go on to item 15, report update, Merced County Association of Governments, MCAG, and Measure V Committee. The only thing I have to report is that I will be bringing to you, or MCAG will be be finishing up a funding plan for Pioneer Road as well as AME Atwater Merced Expressway. And Mr. Freya, I'm sorry you're going to have surgery, but it's going to be for the good to correct some ills. And so Mr. Freya will not be with us unless we can arrange for a special meeting to have Mr. Freya where we can, all five of us can discuss this. So city manager is working on that, and if it works within Mr. Freya's time, because we have the League of Cities, so it's going to be a little bit tough to schedule. But if we can do that, I hope we can, to include Mr. Freya in discussion. If not, the four of us will be discussing the proposal set forth by MCAG and what we think of that proposal and what the chances are to build Pioneer Road. So that's all I'm going to say about that until the funding plan comes out. Director Fachin has been working diligently on the scope and sequence of Pioneer to make it a doable project. But eventually the funding comes forth from MCAG. So let's wait till we get more information, and then I'll bring that forward in a public meeting, and then council, you can give me direction as to which way we should go. All right, let's go on to item 16, City Council member reports. Tonight we'll start with Mr. Jones. Thank you. Okay, Mrs. Lewis. Sorry, let's get this. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have one report, and that is on October 31st from 5:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. There will be a Harvest Fun Fest located at 821 West L Street in Los Banos. And the community is invited out. There'll be raffles of bicycles, gift cards, and many more items. There'll be a bounce house for the kids, carnival games, food court, fire truck, cakewalk, candies, and trunk or treat. So I believe all of our children received the flyer to take home at our elementary and junior high schools. So I'm just reminding the public, please come out. We had over 2,500 kids out last year, and it's a wonderful time for them to come and have fun and feel safe. So that's October 31st at 821 West L Street, 5:30 to 8. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Faria.
Thank you, Mayor. As you mentioned, I will be out for surgery for a few weeks, maybe a couple months. I don't know exactly how long. I put this off. Symptoms are 20 years old, and they finally caught up with me. So they affect my ability to play the piano, and that's not something I can let go. So I will be going to the best doctors in the world, and I do ask for everyone's prayers who does pray. I very much appreciate them. And then finally, just a comment, I would like to ask that anytime a city attorney has to recuse himself, that we have a substitute city attorney to sit in his place on any regular council meeting, particularly when there are ordinances on the table. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Mrs. Santos.
You can please excuse my voice. I'm sorry, it's been kind of doing this for days. But October 19th at Ranchwood Park at 3 p.m., there is the Parks and Rec is throwing the Party in the Park series. So please come down and join. That's in District 1. Once again, Ranchwood Park, which is 515 Stonewood Drive. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I'm looking at this calendar, the council calendar, and there are the flu shot clinic at Memorial Hospital from, what time? 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Free flu shots at Memorial Hospital. So it's like a drive-by shot with just a needle, not anything else. So if you need flu shots, please, it's on the 9th of October at Memorial Hospital. Also, November 2nd, was that the date, the VFW parade? Does that sound right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. VFW parade, always a great event, and a great collaboration between the VFW and the city of Los Banos. And December 10th, we're having the Business Expo at the community center. So please drop by if you're thinking of starting a business. And that would be 9 to 3 p.m. at the community center. And then October 17th, 6 to 8 p.m. at the Police Annex, new retail info, retail business, and Rhonda Lowe is putting these two events together. I will tell you that all 5 of the city council members, we receive concerns about things in our city. And I would ask you, with a 3-step process, if you have something that you need to talk to the city about, and depending upon the issue that you have, please contact the city officials first. And then they will, the city will direct you to the proper department to make sure that that gets corrected. If you are still not satisfied, then you can contact any council member up here, and they will gladly call you back. And then you can also contact me. I would prefer that you contact the person in your district, and you can also contact me because you get 2 people working for you on every issue. The council member that you have and the mayor too. So, but I would ask you to contact the city first. They are your first line of contact, and almost always they can help you to get the situation resolved. But we want to work for you. That's our job. But go through the city first. We are working on a number of issues of things that the city and the council members think need correction. And I can tell you that all 5 city council members go to our city manager and the department heads to discuss issues that of their concern to make sure that we have the best city that we can possibly have. And if something comes up that you think needs attention, then please, you're feel free to contact us, but I would have you contact a city staff person first. And today I just asked the city manager for a plan for in back of Food for Less, because we're having some problems with trash cans and garbage. And so that's just one of the things that we're working on to make sure that we have safe places in back, and we'll be getting a plan to abate that too. So issues come up. That's just one as an example, and we need to take care of things. And just want you to know that city staff and council members and the mayor are working for you. So help us out if you need to if you need an issue solved. Contact us, please. So with that, I am going to adjourn the regularly scheduled city council meeting of October 16th, 2019 has been canceled due to the city council members attending the League of Cities Conference in Long Beach, California, October 16th to the 18th, 2019. The next regularly scheduled meeting will be held on November 6th, 2019. And with that, any other comments, council? I would like to adjourn this meeting at 10 p.m.